Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Chris Kelso, filling in for Kevin Price, who's out making the world a better place. As always, you can listen to this show or any of our past shows at priceofbusiness.com. Coming up next right now, we have Max Garoutte, MD. Max, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Chris?
Doing very well, thank you. For all those listeners out there, let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. I'm a board-certified cardiologist. I practice non-invasive, invasive, and interventional cardiology in San Antonio, Texas. Been practicing since 1991, and I am kind of a dinosaur. I'm a solo independent physician in a world where more physicians are being employed by hospitals and insurance companies.
Wow, that is, you just got through getting right up my alley. My daughter was born with a congenital heart defect 10 years ago, went through multiple open heart surgeries, and still has to have a couple more, obviously, coming up right there. But, very interesting what's going on with our market, more importantly, and in that realm of cardiology. First and foremost is there's a lot of change going on in regards to medicine and some new technologies and endeavors going on around the heart. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we've been very blessed. Starting in practice in 1991, I was really fortunate to be at the very beginning of changes in how we manage patients. When I started, we just had what we call plain old balloon angioplasty, which is using a balloon to open up vessels in the heart and in the peripheral vascular system. And I've seen the evolution in the past 3 decades from going to very crude technology to very sophisticated, where we're able to use lasers and atherectomy devices, or so-called rotor-rooter devices, and then, of course, stents have become the mainstay for treatment of cardiovascular disease.
Wow. Yeah, no, that is absolutely amazing, and it's neat to see because, one of the things that we do have is in this market, there's a lot of problems that are happening health-wise to individuals, not only cardiology, but for everything out there. I mean, I tell everybody, look at autism and how it's grown over the years. I tell everybody we're obviously eating something wrong in community right now that is affecting us as a whole. But, a little bit about independent practice, independent medicine. I mean, you stayed independent and resisted going, obviously, to some of these bigger groups and organizations and being employed directly by some of these. How have you managed to do so, and what has been your sort of philosophy around that?
Well, my philosophy is one that I honor the oath that I took in 1985 when I graduated from medical school. It was the traditional Hippocratic Oath, and kind of one of the best-kept secrets nowadays is a lot of medical schools are either foregoing the oath or have modified the oath, the Hippocratic Oath, in a way where, the patient doesn't come first anymore. And I take that oath very seriously, and over my career, I've tried to always put the patient first. I always tell my patients I have lots of bosses. In my career, about 30,000 bosses, and I want those to be the patient, not an insurance company or a hospital. And so that's why I've stayed independent and will continue to stay independent until I retire.
And, and that's very admirable, by the way, because you don't see that very often, as you're mentioning. And a lot is because at the same time, it's changed a lot. I mean, talk a little bit about, to our listeners who don't maybe understand this, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts around how insurance worked, how everything gets paid, the public healthcare system, the private healthcare system, the independents such as yourself, the teams that have gone through, including the new thing that doctors are doing nowadays, which you see a lot of them out there, they're getting to this private practice type thing in which you have to pay an annual fee just to be able to make sure you're going to be seen by these doctors nowadays. I mean, I guess what's the end game on all this, or what are we going to see going forward?
Well, I think this is a critical year. Obviously, being an election year, there are proponents for doing away with the Affordable Care Act, or what I call the Unaffordable Care Act.
Right.
That was passed in 2010, and that even prior to the passing of that legislation, changes started happening in the healthcare market, including hospitals purchasing primary care practices and specialist practices. Also, the insurance companies have gotten in the game of employing physicians, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense, and it gives me great concern because obviously they control the healthcare dollars, and My concern is access to care. I'm very, very concerned that patients in the future, especially our aging population, the baby boomers are all coming of age in terms of being Medicare recipients, that they'll be able to access that care and have the right care and appropriate care without a third party intervening and perhaps creating a rationing sort of model.
And, it seems to be a huge conflict of interest as well of what you just got through describing, especially with an insurance company employing these doctors or practices. I mean, as you mentioned, they now control not only the service, but the dollars associated with it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a tremendous concern that I have with regard to that conflict of interest. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, sometimes the dollar wins out in the end. And I think, the oath that I took says that you take care of patients regardless of their ability to pay. And I have provided literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of free or unreimbursed care, which I'm very happy to do. That's part of what I'm supposed to do as a physician. But now it seems like the dollar is ruling, and I'm already seeing the beginnings of rationing and the beginnings of the so-called, quote, death panels, where decisions are being made based on protocols that really don't have the patient's best interest at heart.
Right. Yeah, no, and I've seen several of that. Obviously, my daughter, once she was born, she had a congenital heart defect, and it was pulmonary atresia, and he got really involved in the hospital system, and thus have been really involved with a lot of activities that go on within the hospital system, other patients, et cetera. And I see some of these activities that you mentioned, and some of these decisions that sometimes are made that are completely not in the benefit of the patient, but what can be done cheaper, faster, better, quote unquote, to get them in and out faster. And it's not the quality of care anymore, but it's how fast can it be done, and how can we minimize the risk, which unfortunately we all want to minimize risk, but there is a thing, as you mentioned, which is doing right for the patient and giving them that quality of care that they deserve.
Yes, sir. One of the tenets of the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm. Well, if you're making decisions that are not in the patient's best interest, obviously you're exposing the patient to potential risk, unnecessary risk. So, you have to be true to that. You also have to be true to the golden rule. How would you want to be treated if you were a patient? I've had the fortune and misfortune of being a patient, so I understand both sides of it. Probably one of the best blessings I ever had was being able to be a patient at one time. And knowing the inside baseball really opened up my eyes in terms of what the hospitals and the insurance companies are doing.
Wow. Now, do you mainly take care of, do you do any pediatric, or is it mainly adults? I mean, from your practice perspective, who do you see and what's your area of focus? Obviously,
well,
the cardiology.
We generally, kids are getting big so fast that, I've kind of lowered the age of the patients that I take. I think we take probably 10 to 12-year-old children on up to senior adults. I have several 100-year-old patients now in my practice who are doing remarkably well. So it's not, cardiology, at least my practice, is more diverse than you think. It's not just a plus 50 type of practice. We take care of a lot of young women with palpitations and heart murmurs. We take care of women who are sent from the obstetricians for various kinds of preventative or evaluation treatment modalities. And, it's a broad breadth practice, which is fun. It keeps me interested. I feel like I have to be the advocate for my patients, especially my senior adult patients. They're really scared to death. They're worried that when they get sick, it's not if, it's when they get sick, that they'll get the right care.
Yeah,
and so I feel like I have to
be
their advocate.
No, and I agree with you there. It's we are all, with the way the environment is today, we're all going to get sick or know somebody who is going to have to be taken care of. And it's a matter of how can we plan correctly and have individuals like you that are out there that we can go to be taken care of and get the right information at the right time at the right quality. So definitely, Max, I definitely appreciate that. We're going to be coming up against time on this segment. I could go on forever, by the way, just want everybody to know that. But unfortunately, we have to pay for the show eventually. Max, how can we reach you if you don't mind?
You can obviously use a web browser and just Google my name, Max Garoutte, MD, and you'll find lots of information. My website is MaximumDestiny.com, and you can reach me there as well.
MaximumDestiny.com, or you can just type in Max Garoutte, Garoutte, Routte.
Yes, sir.
MD. Max, thank you very much for being on board today to the Price of Business.
My pleasure. I'm happy to talk to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. For all those listening, we have to take a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.